Right, hello everyone, welcome back to another wonderful day of art. Today we're going to be needing these materials here. So you need your pencil sharpener, obviously, you need your ruler, you need your art book, you need the reference that you guys used last time or last lesson to make these perfect circles. I used a quarter. Again, you can use whatever you found. And then you're going to need red, black, and then you're going to need all of the greens that you have in your art kit. With these greens, you're going to start off specifically with the best way to describe this. So get rid of all the light greens, and then these two greens that are left behind, obviously it's going to be this one right here, not the dark one. So we're going to start with these three. Just go ahead and set these greens off to the side, and then we'll be using those here in just a sec. So in our art books, of course, as always, we're going to flip open to the classwork section. We're going to thumb to a new page of where we've been working. Here we just finished this kind of sphere practice up. Our goal was to kind of identify and break up a sphere into different parts so we can kind of identify different values and the curvature of the sphere. I had you guys practice that skill down here, and so hopefully by the end you guys had a perfect sphere. If you don't have a perfect one, of course your goal is to get it perfect. And if you're struggling with this, remember that I'm available for help, questions, all of the above, and I can help you get here. Okay, so please do not hesitate to come into the meetings or just message me on your personal channel so I can help you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and flip open to a new page. As I've mentioned before, and I'll keep mentioning it, it's a little bit easier if you take the page out of your book and work on a flat, hard surface. Doing it inside of your book, you still can do it, but all of these papers, it just kind of moves around and it just doesn't allow you to get the nice, crisp, clean lines that you could on a nice, flat, hard surface. So once you've pulled your paper out, I want you guys to go ahead and I want you to draw 4 perfect circles across the top of the page. We are going to be using the bottom, so make sure that it's across the top. And then you're going to go ahead and create, same thing, a value scale right at the bottom. I already went ahead and pre-drew those. And so your paper should look something like this. As you can imagine, once you get all of this down, I want you guys to go ahead and use the green. I want you to create a value scale going from 0 to 100. I want you to label that value scale 0 to 100, and then we'll just put 50 in the center. And then I want you to shade these spheres so they're all exactly the same using just this green color pencil. Remember, when doing this, your goal is to try to get a perfect blend between dark and light, giving the illusion of 3 dimensions on this flat 2-dimensional surface. So if you need to go ahead and pause this video so you can go ahead and do this, please go ahead and do so. But we are going to go ahead and get started. So I had you guys draw 4, and the reason for that is I want us to practice today using multiple colors, black, and complements to kind of emphasize and make this sphere look as close to realistic as you possibly can. Now, there are many different ways to approach this. The first way, obviously, is to use just one color and have a variation between values. So pressing harder and pressing lighter is going to achieve different values, and of course when you are able to make a perfect combination and a perfect blend, you are able to create that 3rd dimension on this 2-dimensional surface. Now I want you to again grab all of those colored pencils that I had you pull out, and I want you to start with all of the greens. So the first way to kind of elevate a sphere, or anytime when you're coloring anything and you're trying to give it that value and that 3-dimensional feel, you're going to want to use, again, and this is the first skill that you could possibly do, you're going to want to use multiple colors. So since the sphere is green, you're going to want to consider using, again, multiple shades of green. And so, as you can imagine, and as I mentioned before with colors, when you are going for a darker value, you can either press harder or you can use a literal darker color. So with our greens, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the darkest green. I'm going to pull that guy out. And on my sphere, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that darkest green and I'm going to go ahead and add it to the areas of value that need to be the darkest. So remember and recall back before when we were observing spheres, these typical spheres go from absolute white to absolute black, and then of course again the goal is to blend it from white to black to create that 3-dimension. So we know at the very, very end of our sphere, that is where our darkest value sits. And so since the darkest value that I could achieve with my one color pencil is this color, I can take an even darker shade of green and I can go ahead and add it in to the darker areas of the sphere to kind of pack in that value to make it even darker. Remember that when you have a shade or a shadow, that makes it seem as if it's going into the paper, like it's a hole, if you will. And so when you're able to add and pack in this kind of darker color, this darker value, it kind of adds that extra depth to the sphere. So here, I'm just kind of moving back and forth and I'm applying various pressures. This is the opportunity for you guys to practice and kind of see if I press super hard, what happens? If I press super light, what happens? And how hard do I need to press to get an even darker value or to even get this color onto the page? Okay. So I, of course, always suggest starting light because you can always add, you can never take away. You basically have to start over. So here is essentially the darkest value I'm going to be able to achieve using this very dark green. Okay, so now I know that my goal is to kind of blend it from dark to light, and there's already a good blend here, but since we're just practicing, you guys can take the next shade of green. So again, remember in our value scale, our goal is to go from 100 to a 0 or 0 to 100, and it takes, a certain amount of values to get there. So out of 100, I went ahead and kind of just supplemented this darker green, and I made it even darker. So what I can do now is I can take the other lighter greens that I have, let's say like this kind of limeish green, and I can kind of just throw it in there and play with these values and what they're going to look like. So again, remember that this is just kind of playing around and practicing, and your goal is to go from dark to light. So I just want to put this green kind of right over here. Could even take this lightest green right here. Just put it right at the top of here. And so that for me was a little bit too dark. But I'm still going to follow through just because if I put it down I need to kind of play it off and blend it in. And it kind of blends nicely with this like lime neon green anyway, so this worked out. And then kind of right here in this center, I can take like this middle green and I can kind of put it in there so we can still continue this nice blend of multiple colors. So as you can imagine, this is probably one of the least preferred methods just because you would need to have many different shades of green in order to really pull this off. But of course, we do have a handful of greens, so this is just good practice. Sometimes you might only want to use just the darker green. Sometimes you want to use all of them. Again, you as the artist have that wonderful autonomy to make that decision, and it's really going to be up to you. How does it look for your art? Does it fit with your art? Does it not? Again, I want everybody to practice this option so that you know that you have it when you're creating your own work. So, multiple colors. The next option that you have is to create a darker value and to kind of bring this three-dimensional kind of sphere to life. You can use black. Now, the problem with using black is when we look at a sphere, we think that, I mean, this one is in literal black and white, so yes, of course, it's black and white. But when we're thinking about a sphere or anything that's three-dimensional, and if we think about its color, just because it looks like it's a shadow and it should be black, doesn't mean that it's black, right? It just means that that color is represented a little bit darker, and we'll get to that one next. But so here, again, you can use black kind of lightly in the darker areas that need to be the darkest value. And again, you only want to put this in the areas that need to be the absolute darkest. So your value should be like 100. And at the very edges where I'll probably push a little bit harder to get more pencil on there to make it as dark as it can be. Voila. So again, notice that there's only just a little bit, because obviously if I were to put too much, then it would overpower, and then I would lose that three-dimensional look on this two-dimensional surface. So we have multiple color, we have just black, and then the next one that we're going to do is we are going to mix and we're going to use red. Now, when we use red, the trick when we're using just colors in general, and this applies to color pencils, paints, anything that you're mixing, when we use, I'm going to do it down here, two colors that are complements to each other. So the next one that we're going to do is we are going to use green's complement, which is red. Anytime that we take a color's complement and mix them together, we typically get like this very interesting, almost muddy color, if you will. Now, the benefit and the reason why we would want to get this kind of awkward, muddy color is because it's black is, and using black as a shade would be slightly unnatural, right? At the very edges, black would look really nice, but kind of towards the other, kind of the transitional areas, if we use that same black, it really just kind of darkens it out and it loses that effect. So what we could do, again, is we can use the colors complement, so the complement to green is red, and we can mix them together to kind of make this brownish color, which this brownish color is going to be the closest to the actual true color of green. So what I mean by that is here on my sphere, I'm going to take my complement, and again I'm going to go ahead and take the complement and I'm going to pack it in and start lightly to the areas that need to be the darkest value on your sphere. Now, there are going to be moments where it looks like there's a lot of red, and that's okay. What you are going to have to do is you're going to have to put it down and kind of put it in the areas that it needs to be, and then you're going to have to go back over it with the green color pencil. And again, that's just kind of the nature of color pencils and how they work. Paint, as you can imagine, they just kind of mix right together. Color pencils, if there is a mark, you need to make sure the marks are equally blended. So here, again, I'm just adding the red into the darker areas that need to have the darkest value, and then I'm kind of lightly blending just about here where that first mark and that first transition happens. And the reason for that is because I don't really need this to be darker. This is already achieved nice and well. I just need this area to be darker. And so again, when we use the complements and the mix of the two colors to get that kind of weird brownish color, allows you to create the illusion that this is in fact a shadow, and it allows the colors of green to still kind of peek through and make it feel a lot more natural and organic. Because in the wild, when we look at it like anything, a rock, a tree stump, even a sphere or a basketball, and when we see it in the light and there is a shadow casted and reflected on it, it's not always going to be black. It's going to be kind of a darker tone of whatever color it is. So if we're looking at, let's say, a tree stump, right, that brown, as the shadow is casted on it, the brown just gets darker. It doesn't turn black, it just gets darker. So again, here, this sphere, if this was a real sphere, we'd be looking at the sphere and the shadows would just get darker, get like a darker green, opposed to turning just completely black. And so here, when we mix its complement together, we are able to achieve something that looks just a little bit more natural. So again, we have multiple colors, we have just black, and then we have mixing with its complement. So the last one is going to be kind of a mix of all of it, really. So what I always suggest doing, and I really prefer mixing and using all of them. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and take my complement, the red, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did for this one on here. Remember, as I am adding this red in, I am making sure that I put it in the areas that need to be the darkest value, or a value of 100. And then as it comes out from here, I'm just kind of lightly blending this together with different pressures, making sure that I don't push too hard, making sure I start light and gradually adding, because remember, if you add too much, you can never take it away. And so again, at the very edges, I'm pressing a little bit harder to give it more value, because that's the area that I need to be the darkest. And so again, like I mentioned before, you might have to go back in with your green to kind of go over these harsher red areas, and that's okay. That happens, and that is completely normal. It's the nature of color pencils. But you do have to make sure that you go back over it so that it isn't this really weird, awkward, heavy red mark on your green sphere. And so again, you might have to blend it out a little bit. Voila. And so from here, so now that we have kind of our true values going all the way to the end should be the darkest value possible, which essentially is black. So the benefit of using both of these methods together is that we are trying to accurately replicate a sphere as if it was actually right in front of me. If you haven't kind of assumed and figured it out by now, the goal when using color pencils, or really when we're creating art in general, our goal is to recreate whatever that is and try to recreate it as accurately as possible. And so when we look at the sphere, we have many, many different colors, we have different tints and shades, different highlights, different shadows, and when we're able to use all of these colors together, we're able to accomplish and achieve the realest, most possible sphere that you possibly can. So as you could imagine, you as an artist, as you're working through, when you are coloring, one of these methods might need to apply in your specific scenario. It might not always need to be the case, and you might be able to just achieve it with one color. However, it's really good to understand that we have all of these possibilities to work with. So what I want you to do after you're done with this, I want you to mark 4 more circles, and I want you to do these methods again, but with a completely different color. Okay, do not use red and don't use green. Those are the only 2 colors that you can't use. But when you're making it with another color, I want you to remember that, again, you need the original color. So let's say if you're using yellow, I want you to grab all of the yellows that are in your bag. I want you to grab the complement to yellow, which is violet or purple, and then you're going to be using black. So again, right below here, I want you to do 4 more circles, and I want you to do them in a completely different color. If you're having troubles understanding where the complements are and how to find those, remember, you can refer back to your art book. We just finished some color theory. And if you look here, complementary. Again, a complementary color scheme is when the color is across the color wheel. So here, yellow, violet. If you look at your color wheel, whatever color you choose on using, let's say you wanted to use blue, we just go right across the color wheel and we know that the complement is orange. So, once you're done, please go ahead and make sure that you send me your work. Other than that, I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Remember that if you need some help or if you're lost or confused or it's not getting it right, just make sure that you hit me up in our personal channel and I'll be able to help you. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy.